The morning sun spilled gently into the kitchen, casting a warm glow on the countertops as I sipped my coffee. The house was quiet, still wrapped in that soft hush that only comes just before the world truly wakes up. I had one of our old photo albums open in front of me, flipping through the pages with a kind of bittersweet nostalgia that only mothers really understand. It's strange, how time slides by when you're not looking. One moment you're changing diapers, the next you're looking at high school graduation photos and wondering where the years went. Each photo pulled at a memory. A birthday party here, a beach trip there, messy faces from cake, school uniforms slightly too big. The boys had grown up so fast. Alex and Liam, my two proudest creations, were once little bundles of energy darting around my ankles, and now they towered over me, voices deep and eyes full of questions I wasn't always ready to answer. I was still smiling at a picture from last Christmas when Daniel walked into the kitchen, freshly shaved and smelling like aftershave. He looked at me and grinned. "Morning, Nicole. What are you looking at?" he asked, reaching for the coffee pot. "Just some old photos," I said, turning the album so he could see. I pointed to a snapshot of the four of us in front of the tree. "Remember this one?" He laughed. "Oh, yeah. That was when Alex tried to make the turkey and nearly burned the house down." I laughed too, the memory warming me like the coffee in my hands. Alex had wanted to surprise us with a full Christmas dinner, claiming he'd watched enough cooking shows to handle it. In the end, we had a blackened turkey and frozen vegetables. But we also had laughter, so much laughter. We ended up ordering pizza that night. Our so-called traditional dinner was pepperoni and garlic bread eaten around the fireplace. From the living room, Liam yelled out, "Don't remind me! I was the one who had to make the pizza call. They were out of sausage." Daniel and I burst out laughing again, and for a moment everything felt easy. Normal. Daniel kissed my cheek and grabbed his keys. "Gotta run. See you tonight." After he left, I packed the boys' lunches. Even though they were in high school now, Alex a senior, Liam a sophomore, I still made their lunches every morning. It was one of those small things I clung to, a habit that made me feel needed. Alex and Liam bickered over the last granola bar before heading out the door, but their voices were light. They were close, always had been. Sure, they fought like brothers do, but when it came down to it, they had each other's backs. That evening, while we were finishing dinner, I brought up Daniel's upcoming 55th birthday. "We should do something special," I said, stirring the last of my tea. Liam perked up. "Like what, Mom?" "I was thinking maybe just a quiet dinner," I started, but Alex jumped in. "Come on, Mom, he's turning 55. That's not a number you just let slide. We should throw him a proper party." Daniel, sitting across from me, tried to look modest. "Honestly, I wouldn't mind something quiet, but if there's a party, I guess I can't say no." The next 2 weeks were a blur of planning. Invitations, decorations, catering, cleaning. The house buzzed with energy. Alex handled the guest list like a pro, chasing down RSVPs and even texting Daniel's golfing buddies. Liam, ever the creative soul, painted banners, arranged centerpieces, and fussed over the lighting. He even got a string of fairy lights for the backyard. They were so invested in making it perfect, and honestly, watching them work together made me proud in ways I can't quite describe. No matter what happened, I always had my boys. A few days before the party, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in a long time. "Nicole?" a familiar voice chirped. "It's Ella. I heard about the party. Can I come?" Ella, my cousin's daughter. She used to visit us when she was younger, running around the yard with Alex and Liam during summer barbecues. She was in her early 20s now and had been off the radar for a while, always chasing something. Jobs, men, dreams, whatever caught her attention that week. "Of course, Ella," I said, trying to sound pleasant. "It's been a long time. We'd love to have you." She squealed with excitement. "Perfect! I'll see you there!" The day of the party arrived, and the house looked beautiful. Music played softly in the background. The boys were running around, adjusting decorations, double-checking the food. Guests began to arrive, one after the other, filling the house with laughter and chatter. It was exactly the kind of celebration I had imagined. Except Daniel was late. It was unlike him. He was always punctual, especially for something like this. I tried calling. No answer. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. I told myself not to panic, not to assume the worst. Then the front door opened, and there he was, Daniel. But he wasn't alone. Ella was on his arm, her smile bright but forced. There was a kind of nervous energy around her. The entire room froze. Daniel cleared his throat and stepped forward, his face pale and drawn. "I have something to say," he began. I held my breath. "Nicole, I want a divorce. Ella is pregnant, and I'm the father." It felt like the floor had opened beneath my feet. I couldn't move, couldn't think. The room, once filled with warm conversation, went silent. All I could hear was the tick of the clock on the wall. Alex stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "This is a joke, right? Dad?" Liam didn't say anything. He just stared at the floor, his eyes glistening with tears. Ella stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." But the way she said it, like she wasn't sure she meant it, made my stomach turn. I looked at Daniel, waiting for something. An explanation, an apology, anything. But he just stood there, silent. Guests started to leave, quietly and quickly, offering awkward nods and glances. The party was over before it even began. That night, I sat on the living room couch with Alex and Liam. None of us really spoke. What was there to say? Alex finally broke the silence. "I can't believe he would do this to us." Liam looked at me, his voice small. "What do we do now, Mom?" I wanted to give them a confident answer. Something strong, something reassuring. But I didn't have one. So I did what mothers do. I lied a little. "We'll figure it out, boys. We always do." But inside, I was as lost as they were. The days after the party felt like I was walking through a fog. I don't even remember what I did that next morning. Did I drink coffee? Did I eat? I must have, but I honestly couldn't say. All I remember is the silence, the kind that sits heavy in your chest, and the questions. So many questions swirling around in my head, keeping me up at night and haunting me during the day. The boys were taking it hard, in their own ways. Alex was angry, loud, constantly pacing the halls. Every time he spoke about Daniel, there was venom in his voice. "I just don't get it," he said one night. "What did we do? What did Mom do to deserve this?" I didn't have an answer. Not one that would make sense. Not one that would take away the ache in his chest or mine. Liam, on the other hand, went quiet. Too quiet. He stayed in his room, barely touched his food. When I checked on him, he gave me a half-hearted smile and said he was fine, but I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't. People started calling, friends, family. Some of them were kind, offering support. Others were just nosy, fishing for gossip. I let most calls go to voicemail. I didn't have the energy to explain, and honestly, I didn't want to relive it again and again. One evening, as we were finishing dinner, Alex set his fork down with a little too much force. "I think Liam and I are going to live with Dad." I stared at him, completely stunned. "What?" Liam looked uncomfortable, avoiding my eyes. "We've talked about it, Mom. We think it might be for the best." "For the best?" I repeated, my voice catching in my throat. "It's a bigger house," Alex continued, "and maybe it's time we understand his side, too." I blinked back tears. I didn't want to be the kind of mother who begged her children to stay. I wanted them to make their own choices, even if it broke me inside. "If that's what you both want," I said softly, "then okay." And just like that, they packed their bags. Watching them leave was like watching my heart walk out the door in two pieces. The house became unbearably quiet. No more late-night giggles from their rooms, no thumping of feet on the stairs, no dishes left in the sink. I missed all of it, even the mess. But I respected their decision. At first, everything seemed okay. The boys called occasionally, said they were settling in. But something in their voices sounded off, stiff, like they were trying too hard to sound happy. Then 2 weeks later, my phone rang. It was Alex. "Mom," he said, his voice low and tight, "we need to talk." "What's wrong?"
"It's Ella. She's making it unbearable. She throws parties all the time. Her friends are constantly over, loud, drunk. She doesn't care that we're there."
I heard Liam in the background. "She treats us like we're guests she never invited." My heart ached. I could feel the frustration in their voices, the disappointment, the sense of betrayal. "Boys," I said gently, "you can always come back. This is still your home." There was a long silence. "We'll think about it," Alex finally said. Another week passed, then another. And then one night, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Daniel and Ella standing on my porch. Daniel looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. Ella, on the other hand, looked furious. "You need to take your sons back," she snapped before I could even say hello. "They're ruining our lives." I stared at her, stunned. "Excuse me?" Daniel looked embarrassed but said nothing. "They eat too much. They're always around. They're in the way," Ella continued, waving her arms. "I didn't sign up for this." "They're your sons too, Daniel. I said coldly, my eyes locked on his. They have every right to be there. Ella scoffed. Well, they can't stay. I've had enough. I waited for Daniel to defend them, to speak up, but he just looked at the ground. That silence told me everything. Boys, I called over my shoulder, grab your things. They were back home within the hour. Our small apartment was nowhere near as big as Daniel's house, but it was ours. And it was filled with love, with warmth, with safety. They didn't complain once. Not about the size, not about sharing a room, not about the lack of space. They were just happy to be back. I missed this, Liam said one evening as we sat on the couch. All of us, together. It wasn't long before the truth about Ella started coming out in drips and whispers. Her love for luxury, her constant need for attention, her obsession with appearances. She posted pictures online of lavish dinners, designer handbags, vacations that Daniel probably couldn't even afford. And I had an idea, one that was maybe a little sneaky, maybe even a little wrong, but I couldn't ignore the gut feeling I had. I needed Daniel to see her for who she really was, so I called the boys into the living room. I need your help, I said. Alex raised an eyebrow. With what? I'm going to make a fake profile, a rich, successful man. If Ella really is what I think she is, she'll take the bait. Liam looked uncertain. Isn't that kind of risky? Maybe, but I think it's worth it. And so Max Sterling was born. With a little help from the boys, I found stock photos of a handsome man in designer suits, standing next to fancy cars and yachts. We built a backstory: real estate mogul, investor, traveled the world, single. I sent Ella a friend request. She accepted within the hour. I sent her a message. You have a beautiful smile. Her reply came almost instantly. Thank you, Max. Your profile is impressive. Are you in real estate? The conversation snowballed from there. She flirted. She overshared. She asked if Max was looking for companionship. I'm in a situation, she said with a wink emoji, but nothing serious. I could hardly believe it. Over the next few days, she told Max everything. How she wasn't actually pregnant. How she had lied to Daniel to trap him. How she couldn't stand his kids. How she planned to milk him for everything he had and leave when something better came along. She even called me her silly old aunt and bragged about how easy it had been to fool me. I saved every message. Then I waited. A few days after I'd collected everything I needed, Daniel showed up at our apartment. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week, eyes sunken, shirt wrinkled, like the weight of his choices had finally landed on his shoulders. Nicole, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Can we talk? I stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking at him. This man had once been the center of my world. Now, he was a stranger. But something in his eyes, not guilt exactly, more like confusion, like he was finally realizing he'd been played. I stepped aside. Come in. We sat in silence for a long while, the only sound the ticking of the old wall clock above the fireplace. Finally, he spoke. I think I made a mistake. I didn't say anything. He looked down at his hands. Ella isn't who I thought she was. I leaned back, folding my arms. Oh, you don't say. That night, we decided to meet at his house. Not for reconciliation. No. That ship had sailed. This meeting was for the truth. The boys insisted on coming. They wanted to see this through. I agreed. After all, they had just as much to lose or gain from this as I did. When we arrived, the air in the room was thick. You could feel the tension even before anyone spoke. Daniel sat on the couch, nervously checking his phone. The boys sat nearby, eyes focused and steady. I stood by the window watching the driveway. Ella strutted in a few minutes later, looking like she had just stepped off a runway. Designer bag, perfect makeup, a little smirk on her face like she was above it all. What's going on? She asked, eyes darting around. Why the serious faces? Daniel stood and handed her a tablet. Read it, he said. She frowned but took it. As her eyes scanned the screen, I watched the color drain from her face. Her smirk faded. Her breathing quickened. What is this? She stammered. You tell us, I said quietly. She looked at me, then Daniel, then the boys. Is this some kind of setup? It's your own words, Ella, Daniel replied, voice steadier than I expected. You said all these things. Ella slammed the tablet down. So what, you've been spying on me? No, I said. I gave you a rope. You decided to hang yourself with it. She laughed, one of those hollow, desperate laughs that don't sound like laughter at all. I don't owe any of you an explanation, she snapped. Alex shot to his feet. You don't get to talk like that after everything you've done. She rolled her eyes. Please, you kids were always in the way. Liam, normally the peacemaker, looked straight at her. You lied about everything. The pregnancy, your feelings, even the way you spoke about my mom." She shrugged. "Your dad was an easy target. He was lonely, vulnerable. I gave him what he wanted." Daniel sat down slowly, as if his legs could no longer support the weight of what he was hearing. "Did you ever care about me?" he asked, voice barely audible. Ella hesitated for a second too long. "You were convenient," she finally said. That was it. Her final line. She turned to leave, but not before throwing me one last glare. "You think you won? You'll always be the boring ex-wife." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She stormed out of the house, slamming the door behind her. The room fell silent again. Daniel looked at me, tears welling in his eyes. "Nicole, I'm sorry, I was blind." I nodded slowly. "You were. And your blindness hurt all of us." Alex crossed his arms. "You picked her over your family," Liam added, "and now you see the consequences." Daniel buried his face in his hands. "I don't know how to fix this." I didn't answer. Some things don't get fixed, they just end. The boys and I left not long after that. We didn't look back. A few days later, I found myself once again inside the house that had once been ours, this time for legal matters. The divorce papers were ready. The lawyers were already seated at the long dining table that used to hold family dinners and birthday cakes. Now it held contracts, pens, and the end of a chapter. Daniel was already there, looking older than he had just a few weeks ago. Regret had aged him faster than time ever could. The boys came with me. They insisted. They wanted to see this through, to protect me, to make sure everything was fair. "I'm not here for apologies," I said as I sat down. "Let's get to business." We had a proposal ready. Liam, calm and practical, handed it over. "We're asking for the family home," he said, "and a fair portion of the joint savings. You can keep the vacation home and your personal accounts." Daniel skimmed through it, then looked up at me. "The house, it has memories." I met his eyes. "Memories you were willing to throw away the day you brought Ella through that door." He looked away. "You're right." He signed the papers without much protest after that. As we stood to leave, he spoke again. "Nicole, I know I don't deserve anything from you, but maybe one day we could be friends again?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Daniel, maybe, but not now. Trust doesn't just grow back, it has to be rebuilt." Alex added, "And you've got a long way to go." He nodded slowly. "I understand." Back at the apartment, things felt lighter, freer. Not easier exactly, but clearer. The boys and I got into a rhythm again. We laughed more, ate dinner together every night, helped each other heal in the quiet moments in between. Rumors started to spread soon after. In a town like ours, word travels fast. Apparently, Ella had moved on. Not with grace, but with chaos. At a cafe one afternoon, our old neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, approached me. She was the kind of woman who lived for drama, and today she was practically glowing. "Nicole, dear," she said, leaning in like she was about to spill state secrets. "You won't believe what I heard about that girl, Ella." I took a sip of my coffee and raised an eyebrow. "She's seeing other men. Lots of them. And she never was pregnant, by the way. It was all a lie." I set my cup down and smiled. "I'm not surprised, but honestly, it's no longer my concern." Mrs. Jenkins blinked, clearly disappointed that I hadn't taken the bait. "You're stronger than I'd be," she said, grabbing her bag. "Anyway, good for you." As she walked away, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. In the weeks that followed, life slowly settled into something that resembled normal again. Alex and Liam adjusted back into their school routines. They reconnected with old friends and began filling our little apartment with the sound of laughter and teasing once more. We weren't the same, of course. How could we be? But there was strength in our scars, a quiet determination in the way we moved forward, step by step, together. One evening over dinner, Alex glanced up from his plate. "Mom," he said, "have you noticed people talking less about everything?" I smiled. "People get bored. New gossip always replaces the old." Liam chuckled. "I heard Ella's latest boyfriend left her. Something about her being too much drama." I raised an eyebrow. "Shocking." We all laughed. It felt good, freeing even, to laugh again without the heavy weight of betrayal sitting at the table with us. But then things took a new turn. "Mom," Alex said one night, pulling a letter out of his backpack, "this came in the mail today. It's from the court." I wiped my hands on a towel and opened the envelope carefully. My eyes scanned the page, and for a moment, I said nothing. "It's the final ruling," I told them. "The judge finalized everything." "And?" Liam asked. "We got the house, the savings, pretty much everything we asked for." Alex let out a low whistle. "Wow, that's more than I expected." I nodded. "But let's remember, money comes and goes. What matters is what we've built here." Liam smiled. "You mean the three of us, right?" Exactly, I said, tapping my heart. We're the real foundation. The doorbell rang just then. Alex opened it, and in stepped Mr. Wilson, our old gardener from the big house. He held a basket of fresh flowers. "I thought you might like these," he said, placing the basket on the table. "They're from your favorite part of the old garden." My eyes welled up with tears. "Thank you, Wilson. That means more than you know." He smiled. "I heard about the verdict. I'm glad things worked out for you. You deserved it." "Thank you for sticking by us," I said. He waved it off. "You were always good to me, and everyone saw what Ella was. It was only a matter of time." After he left, we sat around the table, the scent of those flowers filling the room. Alex reached across the table and took my hand. "Mom," he said, "have you thought about what's next?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, now that this chapter is closed, what do we do with everything?" Liam leaned in. "Yeah, do we keep the house or—" I looked out the window, lost in thought. "You know, I've been thinking, maybe it's time for a real fresh start, somewhere new, somewhere we can truly begin again." Alex looked intrigued. "Where were you thinking?" "Somewhere by the coast," I said with a soft smile. "I've always loved the sound of waves." Liam's eyes lit up. "Yes, can we go somewhere with a boardwalk and those little ice cream shops?" I laughed. "That's the plan." We started dreaming that night, not about revenge, not about what we'd lost, but about what we could build next. A new home, new memories, a new life that was truly ours. In the weeks that followed, we sold what we didn't need. We packed up what we loved, and we left behind everything that no longer served us. The house went on the market and sold faster than we expected. The cars, the furniture, the baggage, gone. And then one crisp morning, we stood in front of a charming little home by the sea. Pale blue shutters, a wraparound porch, and the distant, soothing sound of waves lapping the shore. It wasn't grand, it wasn't luxurious, but it was perfect. Our first morning there, I sat on the back porch, coffee in hand, watching the sky turn pink with sunrise. Liam joined me, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. "You know, Mom," he said, "this is the best decision we ever made." I looked out at the horizon, the salty breeze brushing my skin. "Yes," I whispered. "Sometimes endings are just disguised beginnings." He leaned into me, resting his head on my shoulder. "Here's to our beginning," he said softly. I nodded, eyes misty but heart full. "Here's to us." From that moment forward, we stopped looking back. We stopped asking why, and we started living, really living, with every sunrise, every laugh, every quiet dinner on that porch. Because sometimes, after the storm, comes a kind of peace you never expected. And we had found ours.